Good morning or good afternoon, Mike. How you doing today?
Yeah, good. Same to you, Paul. Good seeing you.
Awesome. You as well. So I am, based on the conversations we've had leading up to this interview, I am super stoked. I'm excited for you to share the wisdom of growing the shop that you started from scratch, grew it for several years to a very successful exit. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and let's dig into
Okay.
it.
Okay. My name is Mike Heath. You want to go into a little background?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, where my machining career or manufacturing career started was I was in a vocational high school class in Odessa, Texas. And it was a really good one back then. This was in the late 70s. We had everything from Blanchard grinders to big lathes, vertical mills, horizontal mills, no CNC equipment, of course.
Okay.
So, right when I graduated, an economic downturn began, and it was an oil bust. Um,
Okay.
I think the Odessa, Midland, West Texas area had close to a 40% unemployment rate.
Oof,
hmm
brutal.
So I could not. I would get up every morning, look in the paper because that's where the jobs were, and I'd go visit them and just would get no results. So I decided because I had just paid a pickup off. It was like I paid 12,000 for it, and I just paid it off
Hmm.
like $200 a month or 224. And I put the thought together like, hey, what if I just go get a loan for 12,000, buy two machines, put them in my aunt's garage, and I'll have a job. I surely can go find enough work for me. So, so here goes my journey. I'm just really a green West Texas redneck kid from very limited means, but I didn't feel I had an option of going getting unemployment and things like that because my family
Right.
counts that as um, like like a gift or something, like charity. So
Okay.
I know that's silly thinking, but that's what made me think, okay, I have to go get some machines and get myself some income. So that began a journey of the next 9 years. Um, Again, I would like to say this: most machine shop businesses start out with some good, very skilled craftsmen. That's
Indeed.
what we
Most
are. We're
most of the time.
machinists.
Most of
We're
the time. Yeah.
machinists. Yeah, most of the time we're machinists with a business. That's how we start. I
Yep.
felt like I was a businessman. I invoice people and they paid me a check, so I had to be a business guy. Well, that was not true. But anyway, as the company grew, I was involved in a big project in Dallas because I moved my shop from West Texas to Fort Worth called the Superconducting Super Collider. And golly, they just consumed us because we've done some really great things. They were very happy with us. Um, that old saying that don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Sure.
There's,
Yep.
there's an issue there. If your basket will only hold one egg, so there's times we have no option other than to be all your eggs in one basket because you just have one egg.
Sure.
Because you're in a point where you can't be servicing 10 company, you know. And this
Sure.
super
Yeah.
collider
That
company,
happens.
this super collider, this big project, it was a big circle, like a 54-mile circle, and they were going to collide protons and neutrons together.
Yeah.
So it's a
Lots of machine
massive,
parts in that.
oh my goodness, just gobs of them. Matter of fact, we were looked like we was going to get about an $18 million contract, which was just mind blowing for me at 29 years old. And then all of a sudden, George Bush didn't get elected in. That was his project. Clinton came in and canceled it like day two. So it
Oh,
went from
geez.
us being massively busy and just doing great and making money and everybody's happy to the super collider calling us saying all of your orders stop and there will be no others. That was 90% of our work. So
Wow. What size was the company at that point,
it was small. I had about
employee
seven,
wise?
seven,
Okay.
seven employees. So that company failed, if you want to call it a failure. And yeah, it was. I mean, I had to file bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
and still just so green, unbelievably
Right.
green, you know?
Sure.
So, it's not all success stories, but the success story in it is sometimes in those moments of pain, we learn lessons that stick with us, you know?
Indeed.
So,
Absolutely.
so I'm grateful for that. I never was a victim. I was always grateful, because the only
Mm-hmm.
way to fail is not do it.
Right.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
So there was my beginning. Pretty
Wow.
humble.
What an incredible
So,
learning experience, though.
mhm. Look, I come from a machine shop, so I do Copenhagen.
It's all good, buddy.
It's mandatory. Um, so what happened there is I paid something I did wrong there. Is even though it stopped, I didn't want to let any of my employees go. So
Oh, I feel you. Yeah.
I just kept paying and
They're like
kept paying.
family, right?
Yes, and I
Yeah.
felt like I was totally responsible. So I paid everybody that I owned except one company, one metal company. And anyway, long story short, I left that company with about a couple $100 left. And I
Mm-hmm.
quickly started bartending.
Bartending.
Bartending. And I
Okay.
almost look back at that, and that was a period of healing,
Okay.
but it also reminded me of the value of a dollar. Because when somebody would leave 75 cents as a tip, that would hit me like, just 2 years prior, 10,000 bucks wasn't that much. But now
Wow.
all of a sudden, 75 cents means a lot.
Right.
So it's a good perspective. You know,
Yes.
when I
Yes, sir.
started my shop, you got to understand this. I put it in a little, it eventually went from my aunt's garage to like a little barn, really. I slept inside there without heat or cool in West Texas,
Oh my gosh.
with a mattress on the floor and a little TV on a stand. And about once every 4 or 5 days, I'd go take a shower at a hotel.
Oh, no.
Eat sandwiches most of the time, but again, that's my story.
Yeah.
That's my journey.
Humble beginnings. Wow.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And then you obviously didn't bartend forever. So what happened after that?
Well, I bartended about a year. I figured out that that wasn't something that I would do very long. But I went to work for a wonderful company called Massey Grinding in Houston, and
Okay.
really they hired me in sales, but I found out quickly they were molding me to take over the company. Mr. Massey was sending me to all kinds of classes, metallurgy at Rice University, not a degree, but
Yeah. Sure.
one of 12-week classes, and sales, and Dale Carnegie, and on and on and on and on. He was just trying to. He knew how green I was, but the potential I had. So a lot was learned there, and unfortunately, I left there. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
looking back, I don't know if that was the right choice or not, but I did. And because I was getting married to a young lady up in Dallas that liked Dallas better than Houston.
Okay.
Okay. So um, I began another business with a partner. He's still like a brother. His name is Hugo Velez. He's a oral surgeon in Austin now. But we started this company called H Quest Technologies, and we were selling and building mountain climbing equipment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we did a lot of climbing back in the days, big rock and ice and large
Mm-hmm.
mountains. Um, it was being funded by me by going and getting machine work and farming it out, and then me packaging it or finish deburring it, just,
Sure.
whatever,
Yep.
inspecting it, and then we'd send it, and it was all oil field. It was all oil field related work. So this is 1997, 98. Guess what? The oil field goes down again. So we wasn't in a bad shape, though. We wasn't in a bad way, but we did decide. I was smart enough to go, hey, let's just we don't have a real good traction. We don't have real good momentum. Let's just stop it and split the money and go our separate
Mm-hmm.
ways. And Hugo was like, great, that's wonderful. So I think I left with, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000. No big deal.
Okay.
And a company up in Tennessee, another amazing company called Precision Castings of Tennessee, hired me for a short stint to get their little machine shop rolling. And, like their little shop was just like drilling and tapping castings and things like that.
Sure.
So a year went by and they were up and rolling real well. So then I met my wife, current wife, Vicky, which we have 2 beautiful children, and that met her 20 years ago. When I moved down to Decatur, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was like, golly, I got 20, 30 grand. Let's open a machine shop. I know how to do it. That was Micor.
Right.
That was the beginning of Micor.
Okay.
And Micor rented a corner out of a 2,000 square foot building.
A corner. That's tiny.
It was the back left corner I had.
Right.
And that's where Micor began. And it's so funny. I didn't have I hear people talk about when do you expect to be profitable? 6 months, 9 months, a year. I had to be profitable month 1. There's
Right.
no choice because I already spent that little bit I had just getting ready and getting the machine.
Right. You had no other capital backup.
No. So that's what we done. And it was not 2 years into it, putting 70 hours of work a week in.
Yep.
That my only customer again, it was just me working on. They filed bankruptcy and they owed me $120,000.
Oh man, God, that's a hard hit.
You better believe it, because my wife just explained to me that she had just told me we was pregnant and was going to have a baby boy.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, we had no insurance, of course. I'm a little small business. I'm 39 years old at this point. So it's like, okay, what to do? So I figured out what to do. I immediately got super drunk.
It's always a good answer.
It seemed like the answer at the time, Paul. But anyway, the next day I got it in the mail that the court wanted like $25,000 back, because I don't know if you know this, when a company files bankruptcy on you, whatever has been paid to you 90 days prior to that date, the courts come after you for preferential treatment. It's really an overreach of that law, but that's what they do to everybody.
Even though they still owed you 120 more.
Right.
Oh
Where this law
goodness.
come in place, a preferential treatment law, it came in place because businessmen 50 years ago, 60 years ago, would go bankrupt and they just start shooting all their family members checks, drain the account. They knew the bank,
Got it. Sure.
So now they use that. Anything anybody gets 90 days prior, the court tries to claw it back. So I was like, good gosh. So now I got mad. I was like pissed. So I got busy. I had good credit. And I believe, I could be wrong on the number, but I think I ended up getting like 90 credit cards. They're all like $500 balance, $200, $2,500 balance, whatever. Because I still owed metal companies, coders, and I was farming some work out then. Freight companies, I still owed that. So with the credit cards, I paid all that.
Right.
It was a lot. In other words, that was the beginning of Micor. It took me 3 years later to get back to zero.
By getting other jobs and taking that profit and paying off the credit cards.
Yeah. Really, the key, the brilliant thing I've done is I hired one person out of the company that filed bankruptcy on me, and I told him, look, I can't pay you much, but if you'll believe in me, I'll believe in you, and we'll do good things. So we went after their work to the company that went bankrupt. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because this is offload type work you were doing for them.
Mm-hmm. Like
it was another shop, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I was a C, they were a B, kind of.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
we hired this guy, which was an amazing fella. And a matter of fact, when we had 85 employees, he was my vice president, first employee, and he grew to that level.
Wow.
It was just amazing. It really was. So we came back. Again, 3 years later, I was at zero, and that was working. I think for 7 years, I had 1 or 2 Saturdays off,
That's
And I remember I
incredible.
worked 2 or 3 Christmases during that period, just trying to, get back to where we didn't owe a lot of money, because
That
debt's the
is,
number one killer of machining companies. It's precision machining's got to be the most difficult business in the world
I say that
to
weekly.
manage. Yeah, to manage and operate. It's just, you know, not to disrespect other businesses, but I would think that most people would agree with me that making an Inconel jet engine component, flight critical component, is a little different than making a wood chair. You know,
Yes,
it's
sir.
very difficult.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of room for failure, and
Yes. Yeah.
everything has to be hitting on all cylinders for that not to come. And the
Yeah.
bigger you get, the scarier it is. I think when I sold Micor, I believe the payroll was like 130-40,000 a week. So
Right.
yeah, so it don't
Yeah.
take many
Big
weeks to
stakes. Yeah.
go, to go backwards in a hurry.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow. Okay. So, incredible. Thank you for all of that background. So, tell us a little bit about um, sort of the growth story past once you got past paying all your credit cards back. What were the things you did to grow Micor? What industries? Obviously, you got into some pretty high tech stuff,
that's right.
um, and just kind of that growth story.
Good question, Paul. Oh, and by the way, thank you for doing this, because I really feel this could be very helpful to somebody.
Oh,
Not
I know
not
it
during
is.
this episode, but
Undoubtedly.
all your episodes. So thank you for that.
No, it's
I
my honor.
I wished would have had your podcast 30 years ago to listen to. Um, so yeah, how we grew Micor. Back with the company I owned in Texas, I started asking myself questions like, I'd go to this one shop. In the shop, the owner would be amazingly brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
but he still has a little shop of 10,000 square foot and 4 people working there, and he works all the time, 12 hours a day. Then I'd go to another shop that I dealt with, and Mercedes would be parked out front. The owner had a big swank office with his own little bar and, all that. So I started going, what is the difference in these two guys? Because the first one, I would consider the smaller shop, I would consider him as much more intelligent than the larger
Mm-hmm.
shop. So I started really trying to, in my own head, say what separates them. So I figured out that anything that separates you, a certification like an AS 9100, if you have certain machines, if you're very well diverse, oil and gas, aerospace, government contracting, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I saw, and that's what I quickly tried to develop, is anything that would
Got it.
separate us from the herd, and the
Yeah.
herd being the C shops that quote very low um, per hour, because they
Right.
can, because their overhead is such that if they make, like, there's small shops now that if they make $50 an hour, they're doing pretty decent money
Sure.
because they have
Yeah.
no overhead. So every bit of the money goes to them.
Yeah.
So, but
It's
yeah,
so, it's yeah. It's I mean clearly super wise of you to kind of see the differences between those shops and try to distill what they're doing differently. It actually reminds me of a story a good friend of mine, totally unrelated to machine shops, but it kind of paints this picture identically. So he's a serious audiophile. He loves high-end stereo equipment, speakers, all that kind of stuff.
hmm
And he, in the little towns that he has lived in, he befriended, some of the owners of these high-end audio shops. And
hmm
there was one shop in the town he grew up in. The owner was, answering the phones, doing everything, doing the packaging, doing,
hmm
always there at the shop from open to close. And then he moved to another community, same size community, similar city, and almost identical type of business, same type of hardware. And that guy would come in a couple of hours a day. He had a team that ran the business. He had a nice car. He really was not, he was not working in the business at all. And
He's
the
working on the
difference,
business.
the only difference was how these two guys approached their business.
Mhm.
And it was such a striking a difference. And so it sounds like you observed that in other shops
Mhm.
and just really tried to hone in on what could you do to make your shop like those ones that were the most successful.
Yeah, that has been described very thoroughly in the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you read
Yes,
that book?
I have read
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's exactly it. One of them had business acumen and one of them didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think to run a machine shop or precision machining company, I really don't like the word machine shop, precision manufacturing company.
Yep. Yep.
You need both. You need the business acumen and the um,
Technical.
yeah, the foundational knowledge
Yeah.
of putting chips. So I've seen it time and again where these really super intelligent guys that, I mean, you must respect. I learned a lot from a lot of them, but they'd have a finance degree or a business degree. Even I met some that had degrees from like Wharton School of Business or Kellogg School of Business, and of course migrate to the M&A world,
Mm-hmm.
purchase up a shop, and then it just nosedive
Right.
because they are brilliant and very skilled, but running a machine shop is, I think,
It's the hardest business in the world.
yeah. So
They
a
needed
lot
the
of
other side as well, or at
yeah,
least a key person,
hmm
a key, lieutenant that could have that technical side that was
that's
right
right.
there with them.
And
They
those are
didn't have
very
that.
hard to find,
Yeah, for sure.
almost impossible, because
Yeah,
um,
especially
you
these
know,
days.
yeah, yeah. So you see that, in the real solution is to gain that business acumen. I talked my son into getting a business degree, and
Mm-hmm.
he's going to college for that now. The next thing I'm going to get him to do is go through a 2-year machining course. So
Beautiful.
now he's, I didn't know what EBITDA was. I remember at Micor, 10 years into Micor, and somebody said something about EBITDA, and I was like, what? And so he's already learned that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
think he's just not graduated yet. So
Sure.
that's the way to do it. Blend the two, and then you'll have um, a good chance of success. I should have said this as a precursor. This does not, most of these points do not relate to very wealthy people or family wealth support, because
Mm-hmm.
they can finance in the lack of performance along the way, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind
You
of it
occasionally see
don't
that.
apply there. Yeah, a
Right.
lot of this. Hmm.
So, yeah. So you clearly, so you got the AS certifications. You
Hmm.
tried to, work on the business instead of in the
Hmm.
business. You
Hmm.
clearly must have hired great people, good teams,
Hmm.
built a good team. How,
Hmm.
how how did you learn on the people side? Who to hire, how to make sure they had the skill set for the roles you wanted to put them in,
Yeah.
because that's a huge component of it all.
Oh, Paul, you're so
Probably
right.
the biggest. Probably the biggest.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Um, the worst thing you can end up with is an employee or someone that works at your company that they're not good enough to keep, but they're not bad enough to let go. And
Yeah.
that's the worst.
Yeah.
So
It's tough.
I always tried my very best to hire on personality. I didn't even, like a machinist, I wouldn't really talk to them about what drill size or what is the minor diameter of a quarter 20 tap.
Right.
You know, I would assume that they had some machine knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
So I mainly wanted to know what kind of personality they had, because I knew that translated into culture,
Right.
and culture translates into efficiency and profitability. So that's
Right.
one thing Micor had for the longest, was the most amazing culture. Um, because if somebody talked ugly to someone else out in the shop for just being disrespectful and stuff, that was immediate fire. That'd be like being caught with crack cocaine. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how we operated. So everybody knew
Wow.
they worked in a safe place. In high school, we may have to put up with bullies or put up with crap, But
Hmm.
once you become an adult, you don't have to. So I kind of chose that we're going to have an environment where nobody puts up with, they can work here happily. And, you know, so that was a key, just hire on personality big time.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah. So
course, you can
wise.
be tricked. You can still be tricked.
Sure. But then you got to decisively let those folks go, right?
Hmm.
Because that whole, you know, bad apple will spoil the, spoil the batch, right? So,
That's right. That's exactly right. And yeah, probably the one of the things I had the most difficulty doing with employees is accountability. It's extremely
okay.
hard to hold a big group accountable because
Hmm.
you'll find yourself thinking, well, if I let this guy go, I could get worse in return. So I think that's just part of growing to a point where you're in uncharted territory,
Hmm.
because Micor grew to 14 million or right at that, I think somewhere in that round range.
Yep.
Like maybe we approached 2 million EBITDA one year, which is a really good year.
That's
Um,
impressive. Yeah.
yeah, it was fun. That was a fun year. That was
Hmm.
2014. Um,
Hmm.
and guess what happened? Most of our business was in the oil and gas industry. We had already switched industries a couple of times when Micor was mostly government defense contracting, and then Obama came in. I read the tea leaves on that and switched us to oil and gas about a year in advance. So that worked out
Okay.
perfectly. But I didn't see this one coming, and it was another big industry shift. So those are, like aerospace is real busy right now, but it
Yep.
won't always be.
No, that has its ups and downs, just like
Yes,
every
right.
industry does.
So if I learned anything, plan when things are going good, plan for them when they turn bad. Always be planning for when they go sour, because they will
Yeah.
eventually.
So, with that in hindsight, would you try to have a shop that's like, 20% defense, 20% aerospace, 20% oil and gas, 20% semiconductor, just like really
Absolutely.
diversify those industries?
Yeah, that's the perfect world. But when you begin, of
Oh, yeah.
course, yeah, you have
You don't have that
one.
luxury.
Yeah. So I will put together another shop. I sold Micor past the the period of non-compete. So there'll be another one in my future, no doubt. I mean, it's kind of like you get a bite of red meat, and it's like a I guess like a lion getting his first bite of red meat. You want it again. So
Hmm.
I'm 60. I for sure
Yeah,
got
that's
I got 15 years left in me. I can build another one,
right.
that's for sure.
Just because it's fun and it's hard, but it's stimulating and it just gets your juices flowing.
Those high five moments, you know, is what it's all about. And a big driver for me is me feeling like I was doing something that impacted people positively. You
Hmm.
know, by
Oh,
by
yeah.
I tried to grow the entire company from within. Most of my managerial positions were machinists that started at Micor and just showed big promise and grew
Yep.
into other positions. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
the trouble you run into there, even though that's um, very well intended, you run in, if you look up, and you may know the term, the Peter principle. It's a business
Hmm.
principle
Hmm.
that says, it usually applies to the all stars of the company, and they rise and rise and rise to the point where they're outside their competency.
To the level of their competency. Yeah.
That's right. So those are the kind of things I learned naturally and that are
Hmm.
difficult. They're costly and painful, all of them.
So, did you ultimately overcome that by just making extra sure that those people wanted those new roles, and you helped support them with training and coaching on how to be good in those new roles,
Yeah, we
or
did
let
as
them
much.
say no,
Yeah,
if they just didn't want to do that?
yeah. Well, probably the most important thing I um I done along the way. I was in Houston seeing some oil field customers, and I'm going to make this up because I don't even remember what happened, but I think this is what happened. While me and my top sales guy was running around in Houston, I got a call, and they were like, hey, the airline up above, the PVC, I put PVC in at that time, busted and all the machines are down. I'm like, are you really calling me and telling me this? Go, go turn the compressor off, let everybody have a 3 hour lunch and fix it, you know? So when I got back, I got all of my managers together and I wrote a job description to put in front of each one. And I was like, do you agree that this is acceptable for what you're being paid? And do you accept this position? And I went around the room from my CFO at the time to my purchasing manager to my quality manager. And I was like, good, from now on, I don't mind you coming with a problem, but quick, have a really good proposal of a solution right behind it. Because they were just leaning on me because I would take it. I would do it. It'd be like, hey, Johnny's cut his finger or, whatever it was. The chuck is bad on the Akuma. Everything came to me. It was just a barrage of people. So that's where I started forming some accountability. And at that level, if you don't have that, it's trouble. Paul, there's stages to this game. There's levels to this game.
Sure, yeah.
To go from 0 to 1 million is a pretty big chore, and you learn a lot, but it's still within your grasp of control, yourself. Like at that point, I had machinists, but I deburred and quoted and all kinds of things. Then to go to 1 million to 5 million, what you were doing at 1 million won't work no more. Like you guys, software.
Yep.
You have to have tools. You have to have technology. You have to have more knowledge. So any way you can add those things as you grow, it'll prove wise. So then to grow to 10 million, all I know is going up to about the 14 million range. Beyond that is uncharted territory to me. And I'm sure there's lessons there that would need to be learned as well at that level.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I've lived that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You had a shop.
Yeah. When we sold our shop, we were about 12 million. So not quite as big as yours, but
you know exactly what I'm speaking of. Yes,
sir.
Yeah.
Whole different systems, even different people in charge of things. Like you could have, a CFO that is great from the $0 to $5 million size company. And then above that, they're kind of lost and you really need someone different, and you see this, in companies that get into the billions, like they just need different people with different skill sets at different phases of their growth. And understanding that and making sure you have the right people in the right seats of the bus for whatever stage you're at is one of the key parts of being a great owner, great founder. So
and it seems like we valued college education so much over the years and technology that it's starting to become more and more difficult to find truly seasoned manufacturing professionals. Of course, a manufacturing engineer is an awesome position or a person to hire that are very, but we've, even myself, times have been a lot nicer here for me in the last 20 years than they were in my first 20 years. So you become much softer too. And,
you're not sleeping on a mattress in the corner at this point.
Paul, that'll make you tough. And there's some positives that go with that. But I'm not saying I want to return to that.
Sure.
But
so when you start your new shop, you're not going to put a mattress in the corner?
I can't imagine that happening, Paul.
You have the means now to not have to do that.
Yeah, I have the means now to put a bunk bed, baby.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So I've noticed in the last couple of years, especially, 2023, that I'm perceiving a wider, like there's always companies in any industry, there's always companies that do well, and there's always companies that don't do as well. We were talking about that just early on when you were learning, the lessons from the successful shops. But it seems like the gap between the ones that are doing well and the ones that are not is getting wider. And I'd love to know, like some shops, and I wrote about this in a blog recently, some shops they're absolutely slammed. They're setting records, new, revenue records every month. And there's other shops that are online saying, "Hey, I got spindle capacity. I can do quick turnaround work right now."
Mm-hmm. Good
What
point.
do you think? Yeah, what do you think is really separating these shops? What are the owners doing or not doing that could help get them into that better category?
It could be Paul, a funding disparity. Because this day and time, it does take a lot of technology, and
Sure.
super skilled guys are very expensive. That days of machinists making $18 an hour is gone.
Right.
I mean, and you can do a lot with people that's operators today.
Sure.
So I think embracing the new world, embracing new technology, and the proper funding is the key there. Because you have to have a good sales in machining today is tougher than it's ever been. It really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what did you do over the years to, besides the times where your bank, your major customer went bankrupt or something, or maybe after those periods when you needed to backfill with work, what did you do to do sales? Did you hire salespeople? Did you do that yourself? Did you work with, outside reps?
Yeah, I did it myself. We're talking about probably 2001. So at that time, it was still very easy to pick up the phone, talk to the purchasing manager and going, "Hey, can I send you some information or can I come by and visit you and leave you some literature?" It was much easier. Sales is much more difficult now. Everybody has email that most buyers are just, good luck getting into them. And you have systems like Lucia, which is a very good system that you can find almost anybody's information. If you wanted to look at it and find the purchasing manager at Boeing or Bell Helicopter, you can find it in there. Reach out to them.
Lucia,
it's kind of like
I've not heard of this.
Huh?
I've not heard of Lucia.
Lucia, yeah. Look, check it out. Lusha. So it's very helpful. But I think so many of these people are so busy that you don't get responses. So it's not the purchasing person you're after anymore. It's more like a liaison, a small business liaison, or meeting them at seminars or industry shows or advertising, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Sure.
That can matter. So none of that applied when I was, starting Micor. Oh, by the way, I mentioned my son was pregnant. I'm probably the only person that I went to the hospital and explained to him, I'm past broke, but I'm about to have a child and I promise I'll pay for it. They said, "Okay, no problem." I guess they couldn't say no. But anyway, I paid for that for the next 2 years. So I always told my son, his name is Riley, that he was on layaway. I don't know if you know. I had my baby on layaway. You don't know what that means.
I do know what layaway is, yes.
Yeah, it's just funny stories.
That is hilarious.
Of the journey. But really probably the best way to develop sales, right? And timing is everything in business. If your time is correct, you can be average and look brilliant. In bad timing environments, you can be brilliant and look like an imbecile.
Sure.
Yeah. So timing is everything. I see right now, if you just do the math on our debt, all the things going on in the world, we're headed to a financial train wreck.
Sure.
The one industry that's kind of safe is precision machining that does government contracting.
Right.
Or works direct with the DOD contractors, like Lockheed, etc. So I think that would be my thought right now to really try to flex to government contracting.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of that being done.
But as you said, it's super, trying to get in in with a buyer at Lockheed, that's it's a tough road.
That's right.
So yeah, there's lots of strategies, lots of ways to.
But it's not a tough road to do government contracting. There is a lot to learn. My first government contract, I was 21 when I had that mattress in the shop floor.
Yep.
I drove from West Texas to Tinker Air Force Base about 5 times. They'd have little how to do business with the government. And it was so much
really?
Yeah, it was so much different then. There was actual bid boards where the bids were hung up, and you just pulled them off there and left with them. And
wow.
all the prints were on microfiche. So that was my beginning of government contract. A matter of fact, I become like a, I don't know, kind of a little local star, because in the oil patch, here's this nutty little kid over here that just got a government contract.
Right.
So, but I was still green, and there's a lot to learn, but I've been involved in government contracting ever since. So I've helped 2 companies. I'm helping another company currently, and we're about halfway through the process of them getting them set up to bid on government contracts. And of course, I was going to help through the process till they get it down. You know, your workflow to packaging to, FAR clauses. So,
are you helping them through the CMMC process, or?
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. Right now, CMMC is not enforced. They came out with,
but it's coming soon. It's coming soon, though.
It is coming, but it'll have to be over years. I mean, I don't know how much you've looked at it. To be fully certified, I think there's 140.
For level 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're very knowledgeable. So yeah, it's coming, but if you're already doing work with them, I think you're grandfathered in a little bit. So now's the time. Not that you won't have to deal with that someday, but there's no small businesses that can absorb doing that in a year's time. It'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. In my day job,
what's your feeling on that? I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, in my day job, we are coming up with systems and processes and ways to considerably reduce the cost and lead time of a shop doing those things. So that's not what this podcast is about. So I don't want to go too much more into that. But yeah, it has been kicked. The can has been kicked down the road a few times by the government. They went from CMMC 1.0 to 2.0, but I believe there's now what I believe is going to be some fairly hard deadlines. And I know that anecdotally, I've talked to some shops that have told me that their customers are now saying you cannot bid on these jobs unless you have, demonstrable progress towards CMMC. So even though it's not in place yet, they are losing opportunities if they aren't making progress.
That's right.
It's
pretty
important.
It's a very good point. Very good point. So there again, that's a challenging to get into that industry. It's challenging to get into that industry. And that makes it much harder, because that's a cost that a lot of machinists that are going to start a shop, they just can't hang there.
Absolutely.
So it's a big quandary.
Unless it's a significant part of your business, they may just decide to get out of that business altogether. But as to your point, it's going to be one of the safer industries going forward, even when the economy takes a tanker. They're still going to be making weapons and defense products for a long time to come.
That's exactly true. And I think that's where, that's what will drive the speed of the CMMC, is how badly they need small businesses,
Sure.
So I'm with you. It's coming, but
yes, sir.
It's a chore. I've began that journey, and there's a few easy steps in the beginning that you can do to kind of get the wolves off of you. And you, of course, know that.
Well, the level 1 is, I think, 17 controls. They're all very low-hanging fruit, just good, obvious things to actually make your company quite a bit safer.
Yeah,
like turning on 2-factor authentication
with
any software products you have and things like that.
BitLocker, exactly.
So, wow, I want to ask you a couple things. What, besides the obvious of your clients going bankrupt and you having to even pay back money, that is so crazy. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced growing your shop? And then what were some of the best decisions you ever made? Sort of, both sides of that, the highs and the lows, maybe.
Golly, Paul. I, I would say there were several highs. Um, I one of the things that sticks out in my mind about Micor each year would have a dirty Santa at Christmas, and we'd go somewhere and rent the whole place, a really nice place, and me and my vice president and first employee, we'd go buy all these gifts that would cost somewhere between 50 and 100, and we played Dirty Santa, and just the happiness of the guys, and we'd always have a very proper meal for them, and a nice venue, and just those happy moments like that really is what I remember.
Yeah.
I remember those more than I remember the pain.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was good. The bad, okay, I was a solo. There's entrepreneurs that are naturally somebody that are not so risk adverse or willing to take a chance on developing their own business. It's high risk. Just because you're bold enough to do it and you work hard enough to do it, don't mean it'll be successful. It can still fail.
Yep.
So
and many must do.
Yeah. And then you have a solopreneur, which is what I've always been, meaning without a brother or an uncle or a business partner or a son or whatever helping. Like Micor was solopreneur. So that was very tough. Stress is accumulative. It truly is. So probably one of the negatives is I didn't take enough time to myself to get away from it, to degas or decompress.
Yeah.
So again, stress is accumulative, and I wished I'd have done that more because it eventually had an effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I had the means to go to France or wherever I wanted to go.
Right.
But there's something programmed in a machinist head that when you start a little machine shop, you've got to put 70 hours a week in. And that sticks with you for a long time. So you feel guilt, almost shame. And
you're not there.
That's it. So that would be one that I would say was one of the, that's a part.
You obviously learned it because when before we hit record, you were saying, by the time 2014 hit, you weren't working in the business much, right? You come in, you had people doing all the different roles.
It was amazing. It was so much fun. I was like, I won,
So what did it take to switch from, I got to be there 70 hours a week, open and close the business to, I come in when I want and my team has my back here?
I think just a lot of experience, Paul. Just trial and error. Like, okay, this didn't work. And if anyone can find mentors out there, someone that has been down the road because I almost describe it as like, those video games like Mario Brothers. Not that I play video games. I did one time, long time ago when I had a broke leg. But but if you know where the monsters are going to pop up, it's easy to deal with. You jump over them or whatever, throw a grenade. So then you get killed and you go back again. Well, when you start again, all the way to that level where you were at is fairly easy.
Yeah.
Because you've seen this story before. So,
and that's what a mentor provides. Huh?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. If somebody could have that would probably cut their time in half as far as point A to point B.
And were you a part of any industry associations like NTMA or things like that? Or how did you find mentors that were, in the business?
I didn't.
You didn't? Okay.
I didn't. I listened to my attorney and my accountant a lot, but I never found that mentor. And that would have been really sweet because at the end of Micor, when I sold it at an inopportune time. In 2014, everything was amazing. So I didn't have much to do with my time. So as most shop owners, I was overweight, not in shape. So I'm like, hey, I got a lot of time. I'm going to start working out.
Mm-hmm.
I did, and I tore a rotator cuff. So I had surgery. And this was January of 2015.
Okay.
And anyway, make a long story short, I had a staph infection inside that went undetected
Oh,
for like 8 months, and
oh
it done a
man.
lot of damage. And really, honestly, I've just now, probably in the last year, have healed from all that. There's all kinds of issues I've had, but I will say this: I'm not a victim because
Mhm.
that was accumulation of every decision I ever made. The trouble is my executive group, where was was a group of machinists that was raised up, and I probably listened to the wrong ones and didn't listen to the right ones, and
Mm,
I was not present, and simultaneously the oil and gas industry fell, which was about 60% of our work.
got it.
So that's
Okay.
what happened to Micor, and I didn't want the company to like crash and burn, so I kind of got busy trying to find an owner or a buyer
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I knew the company was good. It needed more runway than
Right.
I used up all the runway.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
Wow. Man, what an incredible experience. Um,
I've had some great wins and some great losses, and I own all of them.
but I love the attitude you bring about not being a victim and learning from them.
Yeah,
That's so important.
it's each of us have a journey, and what we get may not be fair, and you may not have deserved this bad thing, but I had an aunt that used to tell me, Mike, no one ever promised you a rose garden, you know?
Right.
So I think if we just
So,
wake up grateful every day, we're heading in the right direction.
absolutely. Wow.
What do you
So
think?
I often ask, what is the best advice for shops that are early starting out? But instead of asking that question, I'm going to ask, when you start your new shop,
Hmm.
if you're willing to share sort of what are the things you're going to do first and next, and kind of what's the plan,
Hmm.
that other people could take away.
I will completely. We live in a pretty large home, and what we're going to do is we're going to downsize, and we're going to build a barn dominium out on some land we have, and
Nice.
I'm going to double the size of that because that'll be the shop.
Yeah.
Put a water well in, all that kind of stuff, um, and I'll buy some machines.
Okay. New,
And
used.
I don't know, probably the manual machine. I would buy good used because the auctions that pop up, you can really buy some great equipment
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
these auctions if do your research. But that's what I'll do and put a little one man shop together, and I'll start government contracting and just right off into the sunset. And if
And how will you get those government contracts?
just Sam dibs all that stuff and bid them, and when you're awarded, you roll. And of course, those, like you said, level one, that's not too expensive to get the CMMC
Mm-hmm.
taken care of. So
Yep.
that will be my route.
So you said Sam and Dibs. Some people may not know what you mean by those. Can
Well,
you elaborate a little bit?
the first step in government contracting, you have to register in SAM.
What
You
is
have,
SAM? Is that's an acronym must be for
yeah,
something.
it's Systems of Award Management, I believe.
Okay.
Okay. And once you have a SAM registration, you get a cage code. But to do a SAM
Okay. Yep.
registration, yeah, you have to get DUNS number. And of course, you have to have a employer identification number, and you plug
Mm-hmm.
those into SAMs, and that's SAM, and that's kind of your basic information. Now you go to DIBS, which gets a lot more intense. That's when they mail you a postcard on step 5, and you have to put a little number in within 7 days of when you requested the postcard, or it locks you out. So
Oh wow.
sometimes you have to ask for it multiple times. Anyway, you go through that process. It's not too hard if you've done it. It's like that video game. Then it's JCP certification, ITAR. It's it's probably a 60-day process, 60, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even 90, and then you're ready
Yeah.
to bid. I love the company GovGistics. They,
Logistics.
yeah,
Okay. I'll make sure to put all these links in the show notes.
Yes, and they'll appreciate that. They're also called Parts Base. I think Parts Base bought Govgistics, so either one of them will pop up. But what they do is you put in what you would call rules. And really what those rules equate to is NAICS code that identify the category.
Like SIC code, but more specific.
Yeah. Like I think NAICS 336210 or something like that. 710 is machine shop. So you definitely would want that in there. So you put all those rules in there, and Govgistics automatically filters all those. And you can put rules like, I want to look at contracts that has clear data, clear blueprints, and clear technical data. Okay, that'll eliminate a lot of them. Right. So you get it down to where most everything you see, at least a third of it, you'd probably want to bid on, or a quarter of it. You just pick those out and start bidding. Of course, when you're starting, it's going to be wiser to, well, the only route really is pick a $10,000 or $15,000 contract, complete it, get your QAR out there to inspect it, and learn to put your invoice in wide area workflow. And from that point, you're rolling. If the government sees that you provide that, your next contract can certainly be 50 or 100, and then you're off and rolling. You know, they start, once they get a trust and see that you're going to deliver the product. Okay, we talked about a separation thing earlier. Here's one thing that separates shops the biggest, fastest, quickest, the most.
Okay.
Be on time delivery with a quality product. You can charge for that. So that's what I used to argue with Micor. We don't have competition. There's shops all around us that we're our only competition. If we deliver on time quality, we won't have problems. We'll get as much work as we want.
Yep.
So that's a good sales tool.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that is the ultimate sales tool, is to be able to demonstrate that is, you have that. And obviously it's easier to do it with client you have a track record with. For those that you haven't done the work for, they got to take your word for it. But I think that having incredibly robust business processes,
yes, amen,
and software tools is one of the best selling points, because anyone can buy fancy machines, but unless you have really good business processes to back all that up and demonstrate how you will be on time with great quality, it's a tough road to differentiate yourself. Right?
Paul, I wished I would have said that. You're so spot on. You're so spot on there. Yeah, the process is really defined. After you hit 5 million, processes are king. Process, procedures, yes, that's king. And accountability. Yep, so right.
So before we hit record, you mentioned the difference between someone that's self-employed. Yeah. Can you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
I love that thought.
I love this concept, and please, I'm not saying this to disrespect either, because both are okay and equally as good. You know.
Yeah. Yes.
When you're a machinist and you buy some machines and you begin your shop or fab or whatever it is, you're not a business person. You're self-employed, just like a doctor, a lawyer, a plumber. Those are all self-employed people because it's tied to the hours they put in. So they'll make more money if they put in 70 hours versus if they work 40 hours that week. That's why I worked every Saturday for years. So that's not a business person. That's someone who's self-employed, and that's quite all right. I mean, that's probably what I'm going to do next. I'll be self-employed, you know, and I may do some consulting as I do that. I love helping shops not experience all the negative experiences I have, and emphasize the positive ones, you know.
Sure.
So somewhere when you blend that, like we was talking about, that base knowledge, that skill with business acumen, then you start to become a business person, And how you can spot that is that somebody that, again, can leave their company and be gone 3 months and come back and expect that there has been improvements. That's a business person. So
I love that.
And that's
that
it's
there'll be
okay whichever you
improvements.
want to do, because it's a rougher journey to the business person. And there's we spoke of this, a great book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It describes what we're talking about exactly. Neither one of them is bad. It's just what you want to do.
Yeah.
What makes you
No,
happy.
I've always said, it's important to be able to take a vacation and not have the place fall apart. But I love the concept that you can take a long vacation, and when you come back, things are better than when you left.
Yeah.
That is truly the hallmark of a company that, can run itself.
I experienced that for 1 year. That was 2014. Right. If you go to 2011, I remember we were at the beach down at Destin, the northern or the panhandle of Florida. And we was there for 10 days. We had a condo there. And my wife and the kids, they went out to the beach and went to the pool. And every day I was in there quoting. I never went out with them,
Wow.
But I thought that was quite normal. And, it is normal, but you get you get tired of it. And that's when I was self-employed still.
Right.
So I finally taught someone how to quote.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Did you read the book, The E-Myth?
I have not. I got to make a note of it.
Oh my gosh, sir. 100% buy that book before you start your next shop. It's,
how do you spell that?
Yeah, just E and then myth. And actually the current version is called E-Myth Revisited. It's the entrepreneurial myth. And it's the myth that if you are a technician that's good at your job, you will be good at running a company that does that business.
Ooh.
So it's right up your alley.
Oh,
it's everything we've been talking about.
I'm going to go get that today, Paul. I'm going to go get that today.
And it's an easy read. It's an easy read. Yeah. It was instrumental.
I'm going to shoot you an email so you'll know that I'm taking your advice.
Okay. Yeah, you will love it. You will love it. And I highly recommend it to everyone listening, even if you're not a business owner.
Well, see, you just mentored me on that moment. This is a book I don't know. I want to learn it because I believe, you know what you're speaking of. So,
yeah. And then another one along the same veins is Built to Sell. So if you plan to have a business that you end up wanting to sell it someday, that is a great book that talks about, again, very easy read. It's kind of a novel kind of format, but Built to Sell.
Hey, did you know I could have sold Micor multiple times before? But I had in my head it was so much more valuable. Like I was only going to come out with $3 million after taxes. Like what kind of kooka bird was that? I mean, because you can set out for a couple of years, begin again.
Sure.
Yeah. So Built to Sell. Yeah.
Built to Sell.
I can't wait to read that one.
That's a good one. Well, I want to be cognizant of our time today and the length of the podcast. This has been absolute gold. Just the way you have shared your story, the way you tell the stories, super fun, super engaging, and really insightful. So, Mike, I appreciate all of it.
Again, thank you.
So glad we got connected.
Yes, sir.
And yes, sir. Thank you very much for sharing all your wisdom with the audience.
Keep up the good work.